And they plan to deal with it all as they bring this world down. As it's uniting, we're going into the horror show. We're not all happy, smiling faces. We're going into economic depressions. Our whole life is to be regulated. All energy resources have been taken from our hands completely. And shortly it will be banned if you try and heat yourself to live and survive in a winter, unless you use their designated fuel, and if you have your place inspected to see if it's fit to use this fuel. This has happened already here in Canada. You'll probably be hung, drawn and quartered if you try and use wood in a wood stove, because you'll be independent of the monetary system, the profit system, which keeps you, or will keep you, in grinding poverty. You're going to be taxed for every BTU you use. You're going to pay through the nose for every little watt of electricity. And you're going to be trained now. The UN says we must be trained. We must train the public to cut back and back and back. And as they're training us to cut back, the cost of electricity and all power is to vastly increase. The global plantation is underway. The food resources of the world are out of the public's hands in most countries. What's left for the public is modified by scientists who worked in secret agreements with governments, admitted now. And these are the same boys who are bringing us in to a lovely world order where we're supposed to march in with balloons and skipping and hopping gaily, if you can still use that word, gaily, like naive little children, as the Pied Piper leads us to utopia, which is actually Dante's Inferno. Big shock to people who think their countries have just been taken over now. Big shock. Terror, hype, fear to think you've just been taken over. You were born in a time when it really was already taken over. In the book I just read, they talked about the precursor and a setting up of a system which became NATO, which would link and bind and join at the hip Britain and the United States and Canada, and eventually the rest of Europe. Go into the writings of Karl Marx, who wrote his, well, it wasn't his Communist Manifesto, he just wrote what he was told, but he wrote it in London, and he was sponsored by the big foundations to do so. The richest corporations on the planet funded him to write it. And in there he said, in the 1800s, the world they bring into being would consist of three main trading blocks: a united Europe, the United Americas, and a Pacific Rim area, all with provincial governments, provinces, you see, under a super world government. And if you think it's still all coincidence, go back to dreamland. Follow rainbows, you might find a leprechaun at the end of it with a pot of gold. Have an out-of-body experience, play with your chakras, wish it all better, as we used to tell the children when children skin their knees. Why don't you wish it all better? Close your eyes and wish it all better. The whole New Age phenomena has disarmed the minds of millions of people. The circuses and the sports have disarmed most of the rest. They say there's nothing new under the sun. Perhaps so, except for the advance in psychology on a mass scale, coupled with such a mass media. But the techniques are old. That is true. Very old techniques that unified ancient cultures. If a moneyed system had never come into being, you would have, over a vast amount of time, gradual integration of all peoples, because young people, when their hormones work, don't really care what colour someone is at all. You'd have a natural integration without conflict over a long period of time. It's happened in other countries too. When the Scots came into Scotland, the Picts already lived there, and there's no records of wars. There was intermarriage, and gradually they were assimilated into the Scots. That's happened in many other countries too. It's only when there's money behind it, because they have an imperative of time running it towards business plans as they do, that they bring in brute force and force things along. Or they use and pay for massive immigration to come in to create conflict. When people come in small numbers to any country, they gradually blend in, mix, adapt. The policies of putting people in specific areas in large cities is a form of ghetto creation to keep them separate. It doesn't help them disperse and integrate into the system. Because one day, you see, they can always use that conflict when it suits them. And that day will come when they start crashing the moneyed system. Everyone can get along just, you see, in crowded cities, as long as the money's flowing for everything. When it starts to get difficult to pay the rent, everyone's worried, conflicts begin, and people start subdividing back into original groups and fighting each other. The big boys count on these kind of things happening to bring in the brute force for the new system. So don't fight each other. We've got to rise above all of that. And don't let good speakers stir up the emotions to such a pitch that the ordinary folk fight the other ordinary folk, regardless of their colour, creed, or whatever. That's what they count on too, you see. When you see the big picture, I see the populations of the world facing the same horror show, a non-thinking future for what will be left of what they call, or we call, humanity at the lower levels, which is a majority. A state of never being able to say, I think. It will be inconceivable to perceive of yourself as a distinct individual, as we've been told. The book I quoted from, I'm sure even that was whitewashed to an extent, but it does at least show you all the groups, the left and right, all the people who went back home and claimed they were for the working peoples. And the lords were there too, different lords, and they go back there and talk to their own peer group and have a little chuckle how they'd conned the public again, or the people, and how had them all on board, you see, on board and on track to the same agenda, always with the promise of a bitter carrot at the end of the stick. Never fails. It's been a dry read for me, reading this old book here. Yet these are the books you have to plough through and stay awake to come to the understanding that's necessary. To not combat this head on as they expect you to, but to go off in a different tangent. And the tangent comes with understanding what's really happening. They expect people to lock horns with them. They're masters of the chessboard with two sides. But we must find another way, which is not planned by them. You can't play the dialectic with these characters. From Hamish and myself, it's good night, and may your God, or your gods, go with you.
Soon as you're born, they make you feel small by giving you no time instead of it all, until the pain is so big you feel nothing at all. A working class hero is something to be. A working class hero is something to be. They hurt you at home, they hit you at school, they hate you if you're clever and they despise a fool, until you're so fucking crazy you can't follow the rules. A working class hero is something to be. A working class hero is something to be. When they've tortured and scared you for 20 odd years, and then they expect you to pick a career. When you can't really function, you're so full of fear. A working class hero is something to be. A working class hero is something to be. Keep you doped with religion, sex and TV, and you think you're so clever and classless and free, but you're still fucking peasants as far as I can see. A working class hero is something to be. 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 There's room at the top, they are telling you still, but first you must learn how to smile as you kill. If you want to be like the folks on the hill. A working class hero is something to be. A working class hero is something to be. If you want to be a hero, well, just follow me. want to be a hero, well, just follow me.